This is really good. I'm on page 13 of 600, and Howard used the tickets. We thought she was terribly artificial, concerned with outward appearances only, and how things looked to people, Renee said, recalling how she and Diane regarded their mother. He thought it was pretentious and fake. She said her mother had money but no style. She saw it as a kind of tinny reflection of wasp glory. I hate fashion photography because the clothes don't belong to the people who are wearing them, she said. When the clothes do belong to the person who's wearing them, they take on a person's flaws and characteristics and are wonderful, founded upon a chasm between the models in the pictures and the editors who determine how they're dressed. Fashion photography is designed to lie. Arbus was committed to a photography that told the truth. I already love her. Hey, chat. So, the last time you've seen me on this camera was this morning when I was eating breakfast in my last video when I showed you the ending of my pie. This is the intro to a new vlog. The rest of August, if you will. The rest of the August update. So, my last two videos, I had a book haul and a moody haul. I mean, like a stationery haul. Both of them were great. Don't regret a thing. I also got this lovely new desk that you're on and this lovely new lampshade. Everything is making me feel very happy. Like my home, the Pinterest board that I have been putting together for years is finally coming together. My sister told me last week that my house looks like something she would see in her dreams, and I think that that's one of the greatest compliments I could ever receive, because I think this house looks like I I ate it up and I threw it out. But anyways, that is besides the point. I'm very happy with my home. What else? I'm turning 26 in about, what day is it? The 13th? In 13 days, I'm turning 26 years old. That's fine. I just wish for more success. I wish for more money. I wish for this channel to grow. I wish to be monetized. I wish to read for a living. But that being said, this is going to be a reading vlog. I currently have, I guess I will. I currently have, okay, it's a work message, not important. Pause. So on my desk right now, I currently have this lovely stack of books. And let me just explain them for you. Oh, I also started reading. I also had this one up here. I started reading it today, again, rereading it, if you will. And then my to-do list is in here, just marking the pages, so don't mind that. But this is The Incest Diary by an anonymous author, and I've already read this book. It is really, really good. It's really gut-wrenching. My friend Judah was here just now, like, picking up some of the cookies that I baked, even though you didn't really need to know that. And we read the first chapter together, and he was disgusted. That's the only word I can use to describe the way that he felt. He was just disgusted. I find this book hard to read, but I think that's why I like to read it, because I think if a book can make me feel that uncomfortable, then it's important for me to read. So that is one of the books that I'm currently reading. I am not necessarily currently reading all the books here. They've just been on my desk for literally months. This book has, well, let's start over here. This is a book that I used to keep in my bag whenever I would go out and journal. And I would just read a section of it every single day. It's just, I think, some sort of Buddhism. It's a spiritual book. I think it has something to do with, is it, yeah, by the innovative Dharma and yoga teacher Michael Stone. He reminds us of, okay, anyways. I just thought that these were nice to read a day a page, and I used to keep it in my bag and read them every day, but then that didn't happen anymore because I stopped going out, because I stopped being able to afford going out. But that doesn't mean that I should stop reading this, so I think I want to put this back into my daily rotation. This is another book that I had intended to read at some point. I took it out from my classics collection that goes up there. And I never read it. So I might be putting it back up there. Maybe I'll read it again. I don't know. For now, there. I want to clear this stack off and actually make it a stack of books that I am reading. So that is the point of us going through this right now. Cloud Guidebook is also another book that or Handbook is another book that I kept in my bag for fun. I think that's also why this one was in there. It was just supposed to be a light read on the train. The Sympathizer, this book. I struggled so hard to read this. I did not enjoy it at all. I got through, I don't even know how far I got. I'm going to assume I got as far as this bookmark is, but I do believe I got further in the audiobook version. This is probably just as far as I got in the physical copy, but I was really not enjoying this book at all. And I know it's very important, and I probably should enjoy it more than I should, but I don't. And I'm going to put this in my unhaul pile. That goes right there. This is a book of spells by a white man. This book I'm very skeptical about, but I think it's very, very pretty. I don't remember where I got this from. I don't think I got this from the little library. Maybe I did. I feel like this is something that I bought from the Strand. Yes, I did. I'm like, so that is why I've kept this, but I also think it's just very fun to read. It reminds me of like a kid's book, but it's not a kid's book at all. It's very serious. I think I'm going to keep that on my desk just for fun. Don't look at my apple pie over there. Americana. I actually did finish this book. I was doing a study that I never finished. I made myself a syllabus. That's why these books are all on my desk. I made myself a syllabus for, I don't know what month. I think it was September of last year. And here we are, about to be in September. And I never wrote the papers that I needed for that syllabus that I made myself. Let me grab it for you so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So, last year and somewhere in the beginning of this year, I printed out a few essays for myself. That is why you see Sister Outsider here. That is something that I was reading with a friend along with another essay. And then this is another essay that I was reading and annotating again for a friend. But this is what is this? This is the syllabus that I made for myself. My September syllabus. And I gave myself dates and deadlines for the articles that I had to read. I still have the articles here in this folder. I did read and annotate 2 of them, I believe. I have 1 more to go, and I read this book, and I read Issa Rae's memoir, and I do believe that those were the only required readings or required texts. Yes. So I did read the 2 books that I needed to read for this class that I made for myself. I did not finish the last article, and I did not write any of the paper. I guess that's something that I could theoretically finish now that I'm bringing it up. It does seem like still a fun task, and it would be nice to just do something and actually close it up. So I'm gonna keep that on my desk too, just for funsies. I did really want to unhaul this book, but I really truly don't want to unhaul it. Oops. I don't want to unhaul it until I finish that paper that I really wanted to write. So this is getting unhauled, so I'll move it over here. That's why it's stag. And then Diane Arbus, Portrait of a Photographer. I picked this up just because I thought this is a beautiful picture. This is a beautiful camera, and I have a camera like this, not this camera exactly. And I just thought that this would be a fun read. I have absolutely no idea who Diane Arbus is. I got this book for free from my little library. Honestly, truly, this is not something that I think I want to pick up right now, but I am going to open it up and read the first couple of pages and then decide from there. And then after that, I'm going to put this book in the unhaul pile, put these back up here, and then you and I are going to go through my army of books that I recently hauled this year. Don't mind my trash can. And look at my Sally Rooney collection here. And we're gonna find homes for them on these shelves somewhere. I need to find what to do with this Harry Potter collection. This is my YA and children's shelf that also kind of bleeds up here into my memoirs. It's a lot. And then down here I have art and photography. And then below that is my printer. And that's not going anywhere, so. Art, photography, and these are my photo albums. But yeah, I need to figure out how I'm gonna get all of these on these shelves. It would be nice if someone would send me some super high bookcases for free, and that way I wouldn't have a problem. Ideally, I want the IKEA. Okay, so yeah, ideally, I'm begging for the IKEA Billy bookcases. And honestly, what I really truly want is mahogany bookcases, but I know that that's way too heavy. But I really want some dark brown bookcases that like match the wood theme that I have going on in here. I really don't, like, I want to live in this apartment until I'm like 80 years old. I love this place. I think it's perfect for me. And I think dark brown bookcases behind me carrying my entire collection, which is almost a library. Something I would like to do when I also disseminate these books is to count how many books I actually have now. Almost a library. And it would look so nice on new bookcases. But anyways, I'm gonna read a couple of pages of this, see if I'm gonna keep it on my shelves, and then unhaul this, or take the stickers out so I can unhaul this. And then I have some books in my bathroom and my bedroom that I need to pull out because they've just been in there for a while and I haven't really been picking them up, clearly because they're not really enticing. So we're gonna swap those out with some new ones after we do the shelf thing. Anyways, let's see what this Diane Arbus lady is talking about. And oh, it's actually by someone named Arthur LeBeau. And let's see if we would like to cape it. Portrait of a Photographer. That's a lovely title. This is for Jason, copyright 2016. Printed in the US by HarperCollins. Designed by Shannon Nicole Plunkett. A photograph is a secret about a secret. The more it tells you, the less you know. Diane Arbus. Paragraphs discussed in the text. Okay, so there's an introduction, and then part one, a wife, a mother, part one, a daughter, a wife, and a mother. There's the decisive moment, stage set French, them against the world, mysterious but not blurry, enter Alan, from beard weddings. Okay, so this is literally the story of her life. Part two, breaking away out the prison door. Oh my god, she was in prison? Yeah, this book is actually proving really interesting. Oh my god, there's 7 parts. This book is so long. There's literally 603 pages. Rather, there's 613 pages, because that's when we start getting to the acknowledgements. Okay, so the intro is just all the photographs that are going to be discussed in the text. So I guess her photographs are in here. And her photographs stem from what seems to be the 40s to... Jeez, she was shooting for a really long time. The 40s to the 70s. So our first photograph appears in 1944, or the first photograph in the book appears in 1944, and the final photograph appears in 1971. Most of these, it seems to have been taken in New York, which I think is also very, very interesting. Okay, I'm gonna get started. Clearly I am interested in this book. Do you want me to read the first page to you? Sure, why not? The decisive moment. I can't do it anymore. I'm not gonna do it anymore, Diane announced. It had been a long, stressful workday, a typical marathon of drudgery and anxiety. I feel that. In the photography studio, she and her husband Alan used for their fashion shoots, which overlooked the all-white, double-height living room of their triplex apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, the Arbuses had established a routine. Alan set up the lights and the camera, told the models what to do, and snapped the pictures. During the session, Diane would monitor details, which usually came down to reassuring the models and checking that the clothes were correctly displayed. Diane would have to go in and pin the dress if it wasn't hanging right. Alan Arbus recalled half a century later. It was a very subservient role. It was demeaning to her to have to run these gorgeous models and fix their clothes. It was a repulsive role, and now, after a decade of collaboration in which they had meshed as tightly as gear cogs, calling each other boy and girl, Diane told him she had enough. Both Arbuses were warriors. Their temperaments inevitably dogged them. Their temperaments inevitably dogged them in a venture in which they had to deliver a satisfactory product on deadline on the basis of a one-time session. We always thought the photographs weren't good enough, Alan recounted. We would wait breathlessly for the new Vogue and Bazaar to come out. Sometimes Diane, her hair a mess, would run to the corner store carrying her customary paper bag in place of a purse. Alan thought she inspired a New Yorker cartoon of a bag lady asking at the newsstand for the latest copy of Vogue. That's literally me. For Diane, there was, aside from the competitiveness and the uncertainty, a more fundamental problem with fashion photography. Years after she had moved on, she expressed the crux of the difficulty to a reporter. I hate fashion photography because the clothes don't belong to the people who are wearing them, she said. When the clothes do belong to the person who's wearing them, they take on a person's flaws and characteristics and are wonderful, founded upon a chasm between the models and the pictures and the editors who determine how they're dressed. Fashion photography is designed to lie. Arbus was committed to a photography that told the truth. I already love her. I 1000% agree with this part here where she says, I hate fashion photography because the clothes don't belong to the people who are wearing them. I think about that statement all the freaking time. One thing that I wish I could do always is in the most like respectful way possible is when I see people on the street, I wish I could like pick them up like a little video game character, like the games I used to play on my computer, and like change their outfit just slightly, just like alter it to make them like look better, because people are just so uncomfortable, and it's generally because of things that they're wearing. I think that clothing should always be comfortable. I think if you're not comfortable, you shouldn't go out into the world, because it's just comfort exudes confidence. And just, I agree 1000% with this sentiment here. She says, when the clothes do belong to the person wearing them, they take on a person's flaws and characteristics and are wonderful, founded upon a chasm between the models and their pictures and the editors who determine how they're dressed. Fashion photography is designed to lie. Arbus is committed to a photography that told the truth. It wasn't just the truth she was after, but truth. She wanted her pictures to reveal profound verities, to pry out what was invisible to the casual eye. A photograph is a record of what appears to be on the surface. How can it be anything other than superficial? Arbus's career as a mature photographer maps a series of strategies to make a photograph yield more than it's naturally equipped to deliver. She photographed freaks, nudists, female impersonators, and mentally disabled adults because either by choice or by necessity, they disclose more of themselves in everyday life than the typical person. She spent weeks and sometimes years getting to know her subjects so well that they dropped their guard in her presence. Just like Annie Leibovitz. If time was limited, she learned to surprise people into her candor, or to exhaust them into it. She could be devious in her efforts to produce a photograph she considered honest. I love secrets, and I can find out anything, she said as a fashion photographer. She was being paid not to uncover, but to conceal. Okay, let's start that sentence over. I love secrets, and I can find out anything, she said. As a fashion photographer, she was being paid not to uncover, but to conceal. And she wasn't even the photographer. Alan was clicking the shutter. Alan said that their insecurity motivated them to build an overarching idea into every shoot. Diane was the one who would come up with the concept. By the time a session took place, when she adjusted the hair and the skirts, her job was mostly done. She would slink along the sidelines, snapping pictures with her 35mm camera, while Alan, placing his head beneath the cloth of the view camera, shot 8x10 film. It was obvious to everyone that Alan was the professional photographer. Diane, a dilettante? A dilettante? I don't know that word. Let's look that up. Okay, now that I know what those words mean, back to the page we were reading. Anyways, Diane was a dilettante, which means a person who takes up an art, activity, or subject merely for amusement, especially in a desultory or superficial way, a dabbler. Otherwise known as a lover of art or of a science, especially fine art. Anyways, a dilettante. Diane, a dilettante, with her contradictory blend of ambition and insecurity. Diane was unsure of where she stood. Alan, alone, even as he ran a studio in which Diane seemed subordinate, acknowledged without a speck of uncertainty that she was the true artist. That evening, or the evening that Diane called it quits, their neighbor Robert Brown was there, as he often was. He watched uncomfortably as the couple's working partnership unraveled. I remember Alan was stunned. I don't think this was ever threatened before, Brown recalled. He gave the room a blank look, like, did I hear that right? She just raised her voice 1 octave. Her energy was so controlled, and I think she left the room, and Alan looked at me. I was embarrassed for him that I was there. It was something that happened inside of her. I don't think he expected it. He seemed beyond bewildered. I think Alan was shattered and not prepared for what was going to happen next, and I don't think that she was either. What happened next? I'm intrigued. Okay, I think I do actually want to read this book. And I'm going to read a little bit more of it while I try to eat a little bit of this cold pie. These fucking chapters are hilarious. This is chapter 2, I guess, or part 1, number 2. It's called Stage Set French. A glimpse from afar, Central Park was a peaceful expanse of green lawns, spreading trees, and craggy rocks. But up close, 7-year-old Diane Nemerov faced something else. Something alien. Holding the hand of her French governess, she had a governess, whom 10 years later she would describe as having a hard, sad, quite lovely face, as if she had a very sad secret, and she would never tell anyone. The small girl stared in fascination, bewilderment, at a shanty town of shacks made. The small girl stared in fascinated bewilderment at a shanty town of shacks made of sheet metal and cardboard. It was 1930. Over a hollow that had once held the city's 35-acre reservoir spread New York City's most conspicuous Hooverville, an ugly boil at the start of the Great Depression. Later it would be flattened into the Great Lawn. That sounds a little bit racist. But she was a child, so I will forgive her. But none of this was comprehensible to a child, like I said. And especially not to this child. Of course not to this privileged child. I need to... Throughout Diane's early years, she was kept carefully guarded from the less fortunate aspects of life. You know, the outside world was so far from us, and one didn't ever expect to encounter it, she once explained, and for a long time I lived that way, as if there was a kind of contagion somewhere, because these strange creatures in Central Park participated in a life that was so closed off to her. She looked on them with a kind of yearning. I don't mean to say I would have envied those people, but just the idea that you couldn't get in there, you know, that you couldn't just wander down there was such a gulf. At the time, the Nemrov family, which consisted of Diane's parents, older brother, and baby sister, resided in a large Park Avenue apartment, a succession of chambers draped with heavy curtains to filter in a perpetual twilight gloom. In this protected nest, the Nemrovs' needs were ministered to by their 3 nannies, 2 maids, a cook, and a chauffeur. The furniture was reproduction 18th century French, and there was pearl pink Chinese wallpaper on the dining room walls. There was a cushioned life that rested on the pile of furs. Theirs was a cushioned life that rested on a pile of furs. Frank Russick, Derek's maternal grandfather, was a Polish Jewish immigrant who opened a small fur store soon after arriving in New York in the late 1880s. When he was about 15 years old in 1897, he joined forces with 2 of his brothers, backed, if family lore is to be trusted, by his bookmaker earnings to expand to a larger shop. The Russick brothers thrived, and they were able in 1912 to relocate to a longed-for Fifth Avenue address, where they attracted an affluent clientele. By then, Frank and his wife Rose were raising 2 children, Gertrude, born in 1901, and Harold, who arrived a year later. Gertrude was only about 16 when she began noticing a young window dresser at Russick's Fifth Ave. David Nemrov was also the son of Jewish immigrants, less prosperous ones. His father, Mayor Nemrov, had come to New York for Kiev. The mayor was a devoutly pious man who, upon retiring from real estate, spent his days studying Talmud in the synagogue and promoting Jewish philanthropies in his Brooklyn neighborhood. I always hated my father and his religion, David would acknowledge later in life. Unlike his father, David moved smoothly through the material world. He had a keen sense of fashion and even greater flair for marketing. Slim and well-tailored, he presented a glamorous figure that was out of keeping with poverty. The incongruity bothered him. He did not intend to remain poor forever. Although Frank and Rose Russick discouraged his interest in Gertrude, their daughter would not be denied. In late 1919, the charming, ambitious employee and the young, pretty heiress were married. Now, how did he pull her? They had given the Russicks no choice. Their first child, Howard, appeared in the world 21 weeks later. The family expanded to include Diane, born on March 14, 1923, and finally Renee, born 5.5 years after. The 2 older children shared a special bond into which the youngest did not enter. That's so unfortunate. The Rustic's enterprise continued to flourish. Already one of the city's leading fur stores, it widened its mission to offer a full line of women's clothing and moved in 1924 into a Stanford White building on Fifth Avenue at 36th Street that had been designed for Gorham Silver. The elegant but narrow 8-story structure eventually proved to be too small, and in 1936 the proprietors purchased and annexed a neighboring building. Over the next decade, they opened branches in Brooklyn and Chicago. David Nemerov also progressed and prospered. He worked long hours at Rustic's, first as a merchandiser director, then as a fashion director and vice president, and finally beginning in 1947 as president, a master at writing ad copy, and a proponent of spending money to decorate store windows, even during the Great Depression. Nemerov knew that retailers' first challenge was to attract customers into the shop. Once they were inside, he was adept at providing them with a reason to buy. He was among the first New York merchants to travel regularly to Paris to scrutinize the collections, which he would copy and sell at a cheaper price. Gertrude loved sailing by ocean liner to France with David to see the couture presentations and to buy new clothes from French designers. On one occasion, Howard, Diane, and Diane's governess were taken along. While the care and energy that David lavished on Rustic took place mostly out of the children's view, the attention that Gertrude devoted to herself they witnessed daily. Mrs. Nemerov typically stayed in bed in the morning past 11 o'clock, smoking cigarettes, talking on the phone, and applying cold cream and cosmetics to her face. At noon, she liked to meet a friend to go shopping and to lunch at Schratt's. Some days, she had the chauffeur drive her to Rustic's, where she would bask in the deference that was her due. For her husband, the maneuvering of business was a form of art. After his retirement, he would take up painting, a long-held dream. As far as Gertrude's children could tell, their mother's aspirations were narrower. She was a self-involved woman with conventional tastes and prejudices. "I wonder where your children came from," she would say querulously to her artistically minded brood. The art forms she enjoyed were movies and theater. In a nod to these preferences, her older daughter was named for the leading character in a sentimental play, Seventh Heaven, that Gertrude saw during her pregnancy. The name was pronounced Diane, because that is how the Russian heroine, who resists pressure from her wealthy relatives and marries the poor man she loves, said it. It was stage set French, just like the fake Louis furniture in the Nemerov apartment. Not even the Nemerovs escaped the depression completely. Pinched by retail slowdown, they reduced expenses. Gertrude sold some of her jewelry, the family relinquished the apartment on Park Avenue, and crossed town to a privileged exile in a 14-room apartment in the San Reno in Central Park West, with several rooms overlooking the park. Occasionally, less well-off relatives would stay with them. Gertrude's parents came to live in the apartment. None of this was outwardly visible, which was essential because the Nemerovs were devoted to the world of appearances. The front would have to be maintained, because I've learned that in business, if people smell failure in you, you've had it, Diane later said. This was especially true in the fashion industry, which after all was dedicated to cultivation and reshaping of the human image. For the Nemerovs, the importance of appearances beyond the business world extended beyond the business world. Gertrude Nemerov's sense of self was critically dependent on how others regarded her beauty and social status. She did what she thought was expected of her in public and then indulged herself privately. Although she subscribed to the Metropolitan Opera as a cultivated New Yorker lady should, she had no interest in attending performances. Now, how the hell? I would love to attend the performances. How are you just subscribed to the opera and you just don't go? She would rather play cards with her friends or her mother. Howard used the tickets. We thought she was terribly artificial, concerned with outward appearances only, and how things looked to people, Renee said, recalling how she and Diane regarded their mother. Preserving an image that she wanted to present to the world. Society lady. Diane was very scathing about it, said Frederick Eberstout, who knew her as an adult. She thought it was pretentious and fake. She said her mother had money but no style. She saw it as a kind of tinny reflection of wasp glory. Another friend from Diane's adulthood took a more sympathetic view. I felt that most of what Gertrude had and did was representative of something rather than something she wanted herself, which is what made her a sad person. In her insecurity, Gertrude was vulnerable to spells of anxiety and depression. When Diane was 11, she suffered a nervous collapse. Gertrude later recalled at the time that Diane would grab onto her hand, clung to me, literally clung to me, but the little girl could not keep her mother from descending into the underworld. Okay, so she had mommy issues. It was not her job to keep her mother from descending into the underworld. Gertrude withdrew from family life in a depression that persisted for many months. Her children became alien to her. I started thinking, I don't love them, I don't understand them, she said. They were all so bright. They intimidated me. I started thinking I couldn't care properly for my children. I felt helpless. I was so miserable that I could barely function. She recalled sitting dumbly at the dinner table while her husband instructed the second maid to pack the children's clothes for camp because Mrs. Nemerov was unwell. Diane would retreat into her own bedroom, lock the door, and stay there for hours. Nobody knew what she did in there, and she never confided, Gertrude said. Gertrude, likewise, never divulged the cause of her pain and anxiety. Why was she so immobilized that she couldn't dress or wash herself? When a psychiatrist was consulted, she pulled herself out of this morbid torpor to avoid responding to his frighteningly intimate questions. Self-revelation was unthinkable. One relative thought she avoided alcohol for fear of making an inadvertent disclosure in an uninhibited state. She even tore up her grocery and shopping list before discarding them. Oh my God, that's a crazy... What is she scared of? Behind Diane's parents' closed doors, many secrets were being whispered. There were the financial strains of keeping a luxury business running during the Great Depression, and the awkwardness of cutting back on expenses without drawing attention to the need. Okay, well, you're rich. It's literally not that deep. There was gossip about David's philandering, which became painfully public many years afterwards, with the identifying of Mr. Nemerov as a call girl's client in the tabloid sensational trial in 1955. Reading her father's name in the World Telegram, Diane imagined that perhaps no one else had noticed. The family mysteries flashed into the view, with the mother's breakdown, which went unmentioned because what they all saw was the surface. The children could only imagine what was being said and what was really going on. To young Diane, the pretenses that characterized the family's life were mortifying. Her visits to Russell's and Gertrude's company were painful. Mother and daughter would arrive around noon and walk down the purple velvet carpet of the main floor. David Nemerov had determined the decor. Past fur coats that were displayed in the hushed religious atmosphere that such expensive merchandise commanded. Feeling like a princess in some loathsome movie of some kind of Transylvanian obscure Middle European country, Diane would walk by the salespeople, who bowed slightly and smiled as if the obsequies were seasoned with mockeries. Even the mannequins seemed to be leering at her. She didn't want for anything. Less happily, she didn't want anything either. One of the things I felt I suffered from as a kid was that I never felt adversity. She said late in her life, as she described it, I was confirmed in the sense of unreality, which I could only feel as unreality. I mean, that sense of being immune, was ludicrous, as it seems. A kind of painful one. She smothered any desires for the future, believing that if she expressed them, even to herself, she certainly would be disappointed. I don't know what the hell she means. That fate is a trickster who tricks hope, and that I will always stand to lose by wanting anything. She recalled that her mother taught her to avoid unhappiness by expecting it, and warned her that to look forward to good news would prevent its arrival. What an asshole. And whenever she slipped into an expectation that went unmet, Diane as a child fought back her tears and said, well, in her best imitation of grown-up bravery. She retreated from the sham, emotionally remote world in her imagination. A reader of fairy tales, she dwelled in her mind among goblins, trolls, and kings who seemed at least as real as the people around her. Okay, so chapter 2 is basically about how she has mommy issues. All right. I did not mean to read that far, but we read up to page 13 of 600 and whatever that is. I'm going to use my McNally bookmark for that one because it's there. I feel like, okay, low-key, let me do a little wrap up. This is really good. I'm on page 13 of 613. I guess I have 600 more pages to go. I just read the first bit with you and the first 2 chapters of part 1, because there's 7 parts and each part has a bunch of chapters. And the first part was basically just the moment when she decided that she was no longer going to be shooting with her husband anymore because they're a photography duo, and she just couldn't take the crap that was going on. She couldn't take being overlooked as an artist, so she just was like, I'm done. And the first chapter is literally just that moment and the people that were there explaining the intensity of that moment. And then the second chapter is about her mother, or just like her growing up as a child, and how her mother, like how her growing up as a child and her mother's relation to that, because she has a lot of memories of her governess because her mother is an heiress, so she was rich, but she also grew up during the beginning of the Great Depression, and like they had a house that overlooked Central Park, and it talks about how their family has to keep up appearances when they end up losing that giant overlooking Central Park mansion that they have, and they have to move into another apartment that only has 14 rooms. Yet she still has a governess, and they still have like maids and nannies and a whole staff. But her mother's an heiress who married a Jewish man, and her mother was just emotionally unavailable and selfish and didn't understand how to speak to her children, probably because her parents didn't understand how to speak to her, probably because they were also rich and emotionally detached. I'm assuming. I don't know anything about rich people, but that's just what I'm assuming based off of that second chapter. But she hated her mother. She hated, well, I wouldn't say she hated her mother because I can't say how she felt, but what I'm getting is that she didn't have a very great relationship with her mother. The first 2, there's 3 of them. Her parents have 3 children. She is the middle child, and her and the oldest child, who I think's name is Howard, they get along well, and the 3rd child never really entered the trio. So there's a little bit there, and that's just how that's going so far. I know this is a reading vlog, but like, look how big my fucking sourdough is. I literally just took this shit down. I thought I was gonna do a stretch and fold, but I'm not. I guess I'm gonna shape it now because this is clearly the end of bulk fermentation. And let's see what the other one is looking like. Oh, good lord. The other one is big as a bitch too, and there's bubbles on the side. Look. You see those bubbles? Okay. Can you see that bubble right there on the side? That supposedly means that your dough is ready to be shaped. I think that's what the people tell me.